My wife joked. My work husband is buying me lunch every day. You need to step up. I replied, you're right. Then I sent her work husband a thank you card with a $20 Starbucks gift card for taking care of her. Her next call came from her panicked HR department. You ever hear a joke so bad it ruins a relationship? Yeah, me too. Except mine wasn't told by a stranger in a smoky bar. It was told by the woman who swore before God, her parents, and an open bar that she'd love me forever. My wife, Harper, 32, bright, ambitious, and, as it turns out, clinically allergic to self-awareness. We were sitting at our kitchen island one Thursday night, mid-bottle of Pinot Noir, when she dropped the bomb with a giggle. My work husband buys me lunch every day. You need to step up. She said it with that light, teasing tone people use when they're testing the boundaries of how much disrespect you'll tolerate before you start blinking Morse code for help. Now, in her defense, she thought it was funny. In my defense, I thought about calling an exorcist. The look on her face, pure smug entertainment, like she just cracked the Da Vinci Code of humor. She even did that little laugh snort thing, the one that says, I'm kidding. Unless you react wrong, then I'll say you're overreacting. I just smiled and said, you're right. For words, calm, measured, nonviolent. But inside, I was filing a mental report under high-risk relationship asset, unstable conditions. See, I'm Blake Miller. I'm 33, and I work in risk management for an insurance firm. My job is to predict disasters before they happen. Fires, bankruptcies, hurricanes, that one guy who always clicks phishing emails labeled urgent peril. Irony loves me, because while I could spot a financial meltdown 3 quarters away, I didn't see the Category 5 betrayal brewing right next to me on the couch. That's the problem with love. It makes you ignore red flags like you're colorblind. Harper and I had been married for years. We weren't one of those Instagram-perfect couples with matching pajamas and choreographed morning routines. We were normal. She was all glitter and chaos, late to everything, allergic to plans, could spend 30 minutes explaining why her 5-minute Target trip required a cart and $400. I was structure. Alarm clock at 6:30 a.m., coffee at 7 o'clock, spreadsheets before 8 o'clock. She said I was predictable. I said I was reliable. Tomato, tomato. It worked until she started her new marketing job at Ellison Mutual. Her boss? Derek Mills. A midlife crisis on legs with a jawline that screamed, I do intermittent fasting and tell people about it. The man had a LinkedIn photo where he was leaning on his own name in the background. His bio said visionary leader. Translation, narcissist with a company credit card. At first, I was happy for her. She needed a win. Then came the daily updates. Derek thinks I'm brilliant. Derek says I'm a natural. Derek took the whole team to lunch again. The more she said his name, the more I started to feel like an unpaid extra in my own marriage. Every night, it was Derek this, Derek that, like the man was the second coming of Don Draper. I tried to brush it off, told myself not to be jealous. But when your wife starts finishing another man's sentences while forgetting yours mid-conversation, you start to feel like your relationship's Wi-Fi is lagging. I remember one night vividly. She was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, smiling like a teenager at a Taylor Swift concert. I asked what was funny. She said, just Derek being Derek. That's when I knew I was in trouble, when the man's name became an adjective. I wanted to say something sharp like, you mean married Derek with 2 kids and a receding hairline? But I didn't. Instead, I did what any risk manager does when the system starts glitching. I gathered data. The next week, she came home late 3 times. Work dinners, she said. Brainstorming sessions. Yeah, because nothing screams creative synergy like candlelight and Chardonnay. Then she started wearing perfume again, the fancy kind I bought her last anniversary, which she said was too grown-up back then. Suddenly, it wasn't too grown-up anymore. It was confidence in a bottle. Confidence for what? PowerPoints and salad? Please. Now, before you paint me as paranoid, let me clarify. I wasn't the type to snoop. I didn't hack her phone or follow her to work in a trench coat. I just watched. Observed patterns. A new wardrobe rotation, more makeup, a giggle when she got a text. It's incredible how someone can look you dead in the eyes, tell you they love you, then laugh over their whine about their work husband. Like Infidelity Light, same flavor, fewer calories. So that night, When she made that joke, something inside me didn't snap. It clicked, like the satisfying click of a seatbelt before a wild ride. She thought it was just banter. I knew it was data. Her laugh was the sound of someone crossing a line and daring you to say something. But I didn't. Not yet. Because here's the thing. The best revenge isn't loud, it's strategic. And as the man who evaluates disaster probabilities for a living, I knew this wasn't over dinner. It was just the risk assessment stage. We finished our meal in awkward silence. She talked about some upcoming campaign with Derek's team, how he was so inspiring, and I kept nodding like a man politely listening to his own obituary. I asked, "Does Derek's wife ever come to those dinners?" Her fork paused midair. "She's not really involved in his work life," she said, a little too fast. Interesting. I made a mental note. After dinner, she got up, kissed my cheek, and said, "Don't stay up late overthinking." Overthinking? That's my brand, sweetheart. As soon as she went upstairs, I stayed in the kitchen, sipping what was left of the wine, watching her half-empty glass on the counter like it held secrets. The kitchen light flickered, just a bulb going bad, but it felt symbolic. Perfect lighting for the end of naivete. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing, steady, peaceful, like someone without a single moral dilemma. My mind ran through scenarios like a financial simulation. Best case, she's just flirtatiously dumb. Worst case, she's emotionally invested in a man who signs her paychecks. Both were bad returns. I turned on my side, watching the glow of her phone light up every few minutes. Notifications. Probably memes from the team. Sure. The next morning, I tried to act normal. Made her coffee, 2 sugars, no cream, because she claimed dairy makes her bloated, yet still ordered frappuccinos like they were medical necessities. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're sweet." That used to feel good. Now it felt like getting a participation ribbon at a funeral. While she got ready for work, humming to some pop song, I stared at her reflection in the mirror. She looked happy, lighter, like she was already living in some parallel reality where I didn't exist. She turned, caught me watching, and laughed. "What? Nothing," I said. "Just admiring the new you." She winked. Better late than never. Yeah, late indeed. When she left, I sat on the couch, scrolling through my own calendar, wondering how something as solid as a marriage could start feeling like an expired warranty. I replayed her words in my head. "My work husband buys me lunch every day. You need to step up." Step up to what? Compete with her boss for affection via Caesar salad? What exactly was the metric here? That's when it hit me. Maybe this wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a case study. And I was the lead investigator. My instincts told me this wasn't harmless teasing. It was a confession disguised as humor. People joke about what they secretly want approval for. She wanted me to hear it, react, maybe even fight for her. Instead, she got the smile of a man quietly downloading every red flag into a mental hard drive. That weekend, she went wine tasting with her coworkers. I didn't ask who was there. Didn't need to. You can always tell when someone's lying by what they don't say. She came home tipsy, smelled like lavender and deceit, and started rambling about team bonding. I nodded, tucked her into bed, and sat in the living room with my laptop open. Not to snoop, just to plan. Because in my world, if there's a fire, you don't panic. You find the source, cut the oxygen, and let it collapse under its own weight. That was the night I stopped being a husband and started being an analyst. And if there's one thing I know, it's that when people show you their risk factors, you don't ignore them. You hedge your bets. So when she laughed that night, glass of wine in hand, telling me about her work husband, she thought she was being cute. She didn't realize she'd just given me all the data I needed to start the most satisfying project of my life. A project I'd later title, "The Joke That Cost Her Everything." And trust me, it wasn't the punchline that killed our marriage. It was the smirk that followed it. After dinner that night, Harper was scrolling through her phone, giggling like a teenager texting her high school crush. The sound was nails on a chalkboard for my peace of mind. She laughed, tilted her wine glass, and smirked at her screen like it was whispering sweet nothings back. Me? I was sitting across from her staring at my steak like it was about to offer me relationship counseling. When your wife's more emotionally invested in her phone than your conversation, you start questioning your return on emotional investment. My brain, poor, overworked, logical brain, kicked into full-blown risk assessment mode. Old habits die hard. In my line of work, I evaluate probability and consequence. What's the likelihood of disaster, and how expensive will the cleanup be? So there I was, mentally setting up a PowerPoint in my head titled Marriage Risk Factors, 2023 fiscal year. Variables. Wife, emotionally checked out. Boss, midlife crisis energy with an open lunch budget. Me, apparently not stepping up. Outcome, catastrophic loss of trust, dignity, and probably half my 401k. She giggled again. Oh my God, Derek's so funny. Derek. Of course. I could have written a drinking game around how many times his name came up. I wanted to ask if Derek was footing the data plan too, since he was getting all this screen time. But I just said, he sounds like a real comedian. She smiled without looking up, murmured something like, he just gets me, and kept typing. Lady, if he gets you, then I hope he also gets ready for HR paperwork. At around 2 a.m., she was snoring beside me like a chainsaw powered by unearned confidence, while I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I tried to sleep, but my brain was running analytics like an overclocked server. I finally sat up, grabbed my phone, and thought, fine. If we're doing this, let's do it properly. I opened LinkedIn, searched for Derek Mills, Senior Marketing Director at Ellison Mutual. The profile picture screamed, thinks he's the main character. The man's wearing a blazer with no tie, one hand under his chin like he's trying to sell you self-belief. Vision-driven leader passionate about brand storytelling. Translation, talks too much, delivers too little. I scrolled down. Harvard Extension course, not Harvard, just the kind where you pay $1,200 and tell people you went to Harvard. Skills, team empowerment, lunch procurement, manipulating married subordinates. Okay, that one wasn't listed, but it should have been. Then I saw it. His wife tagged in a post from last Christmas. Family photos on a boat, matching red sweaters, kids, golden retriever, the whole were perfect aesthetic that usually hides a moral sinkhole. His wife looked like the kind of woman who alphabetizes her pantry and organizes charity galas. She'd probably gut him with a butter knife if she found out he was empowering someone's wife after hours. Next tab, Facebook. His wife's profile was wide open. Public posts, vacation pictures, motivational quotes about loyalty. Oh, the irony. A faithful heart brings peace. Honey, you're going to need to embroider that on a courtroom pillow real soon. I scrolled through her photos, noting details like a detective with caffeine addiction. It wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was about precision. If this was going to implode, I wasn't going down looking like the clueless husband. I wanted receipts, context, and a front row seat to the fireworks. Then I went to Ellison Mutual's website. Public documents. Employee handbook, code of conduct, HR contact info, music to my petty little heart. I downloaded the full 62-page PDF because nothing says, I'm emotionally wounded but methodical, like reading corporate policy at 2:30 in the morning. Buried in the fine print on page 47, I found my golden ticket. The company's official stance on workplace relationships. Any romantic or personal relationship between a manager and direct subordinate constitutes a conflict of interest and must be disclosed immediately. I sat back, smiled, and whispered, well, Derek, you brilliant moron, you just wrote your own career obituary. It was poetic. The same rules they proudly paraded at employee orientation were about to turn into the very shovel I'd use to bury this little work husband narrative. I imagined Harper sitting in HR one day, mascara smudged, trying to explain why her boss's name appears 76 times in her text log. The image warmed my soul like hot cocoa in winter. The next morning, I was unusually chipper. Harper noticed. You're in a good mood, she said, curling her hair like we hadn't just had an emotional car crash over steak last night. Just thinking about how funny life is, I replied. You know, how small things can have big consequences. She laughed, completely missing the artillery fire in that sentence. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her bag, and left for work, blissfully unaware she was starring in an episode of How to Lose Your Job in 10 Lunches. The second the door shut, I opened my laptop. I didn't want confrontation, I wanted precision strikes. In my job, you don't storm the problem, you surgically dismantle it. The weapon of choice? A polite gesture dripping in plausible deniability. I didn't want drama, I wanted documentation. Something so minor, so civil, that it would trigger the corporate equivalent of DEFCON 1 without me breaking a sweat. But before that, I needed intel from the ground. I texted my buddy Ryan, lawyer, golf addict, the human embodiment of calm destruction. Hypothetically, I wrote, if someone were to expose an office affair without, directly exposing it, how would you do it? He replied instantly, why? What did Harper do? Damn, the man knew me too well. I told him about the lunches, the work husband joke, and the laughter that felt like a guillotine blade. His response, document everything. Don't accuse. Let the system eat itself. And just like that, the plan crystallized. I'd use Ellison's own code of conduct as my weapon. Not a fight. A process. Risk management, applied personally. That night, Harper came home glowing. I don't know if it was the office lighting or the thrill of emotional treason, but she looked radiant. She started rambling about a new project presentation. Derek says I have real leadership potential. I almost asked if that leadership involved private brainstorming sessions, but instead, I smiled. That's great. You should thank him properly. She grinned. Oh, he knows how much I appreciate him. I bet he does, sweetheart. I bet he does. After she went to bed, I sat at the dining table in the quiet glow of my laptop screen. It's funny, most people think revenge has to be messy, but for me, it's like drafting an insurance policy. No emotion, just math. I drafted a small plan titled Project Courtesy. Step 1, send acknowledgement. Step 2, trigger corporate curiosity. Step 3, sit back. Step 4, enjoy the data fallout. Still, a small part of me hesitated. Was this too far? Then I remembered her laughing, that smug, work husband, line replaying like a bad TikTok sound. Nah, too far was her making me the punchline. This was justice with sprinkles. I spent the rest of the night perfecting my wording. The note needed to walk the line between gratitude and sabotage. Nothing accusatory, just enough to make HR go, wait, what? Every word had to be polite enough to be defensible in court, but sharp enough to slice reputations. The precision thrilled me. For the first time in weeks, I felt in control. By 1 a.m., I leaned back, satisfied. Tomorrow would begin the first move in a game Harper didn't even know she was playing. She thought she was starring in a romantic comedy. I was writing a legal thriller. Before I finally went to bed, I glanced over at her, sleeping peacefully, face glowing in the dim light. I wanted to feel anger, but what I felt was clarity. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was rebalancing. She tipped the scales, and now I was simply setting things right. People always talk about heartbreak like it's fire, burning, painful, wild. For me, it was more like electricity, quiet, charged, and waiting for the right moment to short-circuit the whole damn system. When I closed my eyes that night, I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was an analyst preparing for an audit. And the next report I filed wouldn't be for my company. It would be for karma. Because love might be blind, but HR sure as hell isn't. The morning after my deep dive into Ellison Mutual's code of conduct, I woke up feeling like I'd just finished a heist movie and gotten away with it. You know that clean, smug satisfaction after you've taken down a system? That was me, brushing my teeth while humming the Mission Impossible theme. Harper was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and texting someone. Let's not kid ourselves, it was Derek. She was giggling again. Always with the giggling. I swear, the sound could have been weaponized. I wanted to ask what was so funny, but I figured I'd find out eventually. Probably in a company memo titled Inappropriate Conduct at Ellison Mutual. While she talked about big presentation plans and team synergy, I was plotting the world's most polite act of corporate sabotage. That's the beauty of my job. I don't react emotionally. I strategize. I don't swing bats. I pull threads. And oh boy, Harper had handed me a loose one. After she left for work, I drove straight to Target because every good plan starts with unnecessary capitalism. I roamed the card aisle, pretending to be just another clueless husband picking out something sentimental. But I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for plausible deniability. There it was, in all its beige neutrality, a simple thank you card. The kind that said, I acknowledge your existence, without implying actual warmth. It had embossed gold lettering, minimal words, zero emotion. The kind of card that practically whispered, I'm polite but passive-aggressive. Perfect. Next stop, the gift card rack. Starbucks, the universal currency of suburban office flirtation. Not $50, too generous. Not $10, too petty. $20, The sweet spot of, I care, but not that much. I could already imagine the HR meeting. Why would her husband send Derek a Starbucks gift card? Why indeed? On my way home, I practiced my poker face in the car mirror. I needed to look calm, maybe even cheerful. The face of a man who just appreciates his wife's colleagues. I even stopped by the drive-thru and got myself a latte, just to stay in theme. That evening, Harper came home late, her perfume preceding her like a press release. She was glowing again, all smiles and inside jokes I wasn't invited to. I greeted her casually. Hey, how was work? She smiled, slipped off her heels, and said, productive. Derek said my ideas were next level. I forced a grin. Wow, you two sound like a dream team. She laughed. Don't be jealous, babe. You have your spreadsheets. I have my boss. I wanted to applaud the audacity. Instead, I poured myself whiskey and said, to teamwork. After dinner, while she hummed along to TikToks about girl bosses and manifesting abundance, I sat at the dining table with my laptop and the supplies. The house was quiet except for her occasional giggle, each one fueling my determination. I opened the card and started writing in my neatest handwriting, the kind that screams, upstanding citizen. Dear Derek, thanks for taking such good care of Harper at work. She mentions how you buy her lunch almost every day. It's comforting to know she's got such a generous work husband. Sincerely, Blake Miller. There it was. Clean, polite, deadly. The words were a surgical strike in cursive. Every line carefully balanced between gratitude and accusation, a masterpiece of professional mischief. I sealed it, slipped in the $20 Starbucks card, and wrote, to Derek Mills, Ellison Mutual Marketing Department, on the envelope with that innocent touch that said nothing to see here. Harper walked by, holding a glass of wine, and peeked at what I was doing. Writing something? She asked. Just a thank you card, I said without looking up. For who? She asked, half interested. Someone who's been really helpful lately, I replied, giving her a smile that could have been mistaken for sincerity. She shrugged and went back to her phone. The irony nearly made me dizzy. I mailed it the next morning before work. Dropped it right into the blue USPS box like I was sending a love letter to justice. As I walked away, I felt lighter, freer, almost holy. That tiny card was worth every ounce of patience I'd shown for the past few months. The world wouldn't explode immediately. Oh no, this was a slow burn operation. The kind that starts as a whisper and ends with HR fire drills. At lunch, I met up with Ryan at our usual diner. He was halfway through his BLT when I told him what I'd done. You actually sent it? He asked, half choking on his sandwich. With the Starbucks card, I confirmed, sipping my Coke. His face broke into the kind of grin lawyers get right before billing overtime. That's diabolical. Thank you, I said. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me this week. He leaned back. You realize this is going to cause a corporate meltdown, right? I nodded. That's the idea. You're insane. No, I'm organized. Same thing, he muttered, shaking his head. When this blows up, and it will call me. I want front row seats. The next few days were uneventful on the surface. Harper was in great spirits. Too great. She'd come home humming, tossing her bag on the couch, saying things like, Derek said my presentation could be the start of a big promotion. I just smiled. You're really killing it over there. She nodded, proud and oblivious. I was tempted to start a countdown timer. Thursday night, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter while she showered. I didn't touch it, no need. The screen lit up enough to show a preview. Derek, HR called me this afternoon. Weird. Oh, it was starting. I leaned against the counter, grinning like a villain in a mid-credits scene. I poured myself a drink and toasted the air. To the gift card heard round the office. By Friday morning, she was on edge. Fidgety. Her usual cheerful texting during breakfast was replaced by nervous glances at her phone. Everything okay? I asked, all innocence. Yeah, she said too quickly. Just, weird day coming up. You'll crush it, I said, patting her shoulder. She smiled weakly, grabbed her bag, and left without her usual kiss. I went to work and spent the entire morning pretending to focus while imagining the chaos erupting at Ellison Mutual. Somewhere in a beige conference room, Derek Mills was sweating bullets under fluorescent lights while an HR rep named Brenda was holding my card like it was evidence in a federal trial. I pictured her saying, So, Mr. Mills, can you explain this work husband reference? And Harper, sitting next to him, eyes wide, realizing her cute little joke had just detonated her career. That afternoon, I got a text from Ryan. Check LinkedIn. Derek's profile is private now. That didn't take long. I almost spit out my coffee. It was happening faster than I'd imagined. My polite little thank you note had the shelf life of a grenade. That night, Harper came home late again, but this time there was no glow, no perfume, just pure panic radiating off her like secondhand smoke. She slammed her purse down, eyes wild. "We need to talk," she snapped. "Sure," I said, sipping my beer. "What's up? Don't play dumb, Blake. What did you do?" I tilted my head. "You'll have to be more specific." "I do a lot of things." "The card," she hissed. "The thank you card. HR has it. They called us in. They think Derek and I are having an affair." I finished for her, raising an eyebrow. "Why would they think that?" Her jaw tightened. "Because of your stupid joke." "Oh," I said, pretending to think. "You mean the joke that sounds exactly like the one you made at dinner?" Funny how context changes everything. She glared at me like she was trying to set me on fire with her eyes. "You ruined my job." "No," I said calmly. "I ruined your illusion. Your job ruined itself." She started pacing. "They're investigating Derek. HR said they're reviewing all team communications. They're going through our emails." "Yikes," I said, feigning concern. "Hope your jokes age well in writing." She stopped and looked at me, eyes watery but furious. "Why would you do that?" I shrugged. "Because I'm a big believer in transparency. And you always said honesty is important." "You're insane," she spat. "No," I said, smiling. "I'm efficient." She stormed upstairs, slammed the bedroom door, and I sat back, feeling something between triumph and closure. The card had done its job. I didn't yell, didn't snoop, didn't beg. I'd simply handed the system the evidence it needed and let it do what it does best, implode. I poured myself another whiskey, turned on the TV, and toasted the quiet. "To accountability," I said. And I swear, the universe clinked its glass back. That was the most satisfying $20 I'd ever spent. 3 days. That's how long it took for my polite little thank you card to trigger a corporate earthquake. It started with a text that hit my phone like an incoming missile. "Harper, call me now." I was mid-meeting, sipping burnt coffee and pretending to care about risk reports, when it buzzed again. "Harper, what did you do?" Followed by a third. "Harper, they have your card." I almost laughed out loud in front of my coworkers. They have my card, like HR had raided a crime scene and found the murder weapon. I excused myself from the meeting, stepped into the hallway, and just stared at the messages. 3 texts, each angrier than the last. The pattern was clear: denial, panic, blame. Classic stages of corporate grief. I typed back, "Can't talk." Deep in spreadsheets. Hit send. Then I pocketed my phone, walked to the vending machine, and bought a Snickers like a man who had just watched his long game pay off. By the time I got home, I was mentally preparing for a Category 5 meltdown. I wasn't disappointed. She was pacing the living room in her heels like a lawyer preparing for closing arguments, mascara streaking down her face, hair frazzled like it had fought gravity and lost. "You ruined my life," she screamed the second I walked in. I blinked. "Good evening to you too." They called me into HR, Blake. HR. They had your stupid thank you card. Do you have any idea what that did? Enlighten me. They think Derek and I are having an affair. I tilted my head. Are you? Her mouth opened, then closed again. Silence. The kind of silence that doesn't mean innocence. It means improvisation. Wow, I said. That was a long pause. She threw her hands in the air. It was just a joke. Just office banter. They took it out of context. Context, I said, dropping my keys on the counter, is everything. That's why they tell you not to joke about bombs in airports. She gasped. You are seriously comparing this to? I held up a hand. Relax. I'm just saying maybe your little work husband shtick didn't land the way you thought. She stared at me, shaking her head. You're sick. You planned this. I shrugged. I prefer the term strategically proactive. She let out a frustrated scream that could have registered on the Richter scale. They suspended Derek pending an investigation. HR said there's a zero-tolerance policy for relationships between supervisors and subordinates. Sounds like they're following the handbook, I said, walking past her to the fridge. You should be proud. You helped enforce corporate ethics. She slammed the wine glass down. You think this is funny? You've humiliated me. Everyone's talking about it. I turned around, holding a beer. Humiliated you? Honey, I wrote a thank you card. You're the one who made it sound like your boss was auditioning for husband number 2. Her eyes burned holes through me. You wanted this to happen. You wanted to destroy me. No, I said, twisting the bottle cap off. I wanted to test a hypothesis. Turns out, Ellison Mutual's HR department is way more efficient than I gave them credit for. She lunged toward me, tears forming. You're ruining my career, Blake. Do you understand that? I might get fired. Might, I repeated, sipping my beer. Still some hope then. She slapped the counter so hard the utensils rattled. What kind of man does this to his wife? The kind whose wife makes jokes about her work husband buying her lunch every day, I said calmly. And let's be honest, you didn't say that like it was a joke. You said it like a confession with good lighting. She pointed at me, shaking. You're vindictive. I smiled. Efficiently vindictive. That's when she broke. Tears, shaking shoulders, the whole Oscar reel performance. I can't believe you do this to me, she sobbed. I leaned on the counter, perfectly calm. Harper, I didn't make you say those things. I didn't make you cross boundaries at work. All I did was send a card thanking the man who apparently feeds you better than I do. If that was enough to nuke your career, maybe it wasn't that stable to begin with. She sniffled. You're enjoying this. I thought about it for half a second. A little, I admitted. But in my defense, it's been a rough few months. That's when she went quiet again, too quiet. The kind of silence that meant she was calculating her next move. She wiped her eyes, straightened her blouse, and said coldly, I'll talk to HR. I'll fix this. And when I do, I'm done with you. Promise? I asked, raising my bottle in a mock toast. She stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door hard enough to make a picture frame tilt. I stood there for a while, sipping my beer and watching the bubbles rise, thinking how poetic it all was. The same mouth that mocked me over wine now crying over corporate policy. Karma, it turns out, has an excellent sense of humor. I wandered to the living room, sat on the couch, and opened my laptop. Out of habit, I checked LinkedIn. Derek's profile? Temporarily deactivated. His last motivational post, something about integrity being the cornerstone of leadership, was now flooded with sarcastic comments. My favorite one. How's the cornerstone holding up, champ? By the next morning, things were quieter. Too quiet. Harper didn't speak to me while she got ready. No humming, no perfume, just pure tension. She left without saying goodbye. I sat at the table, sipping my coffee, imagining her sitting in HR again, trying to spin her way out of a corner she'd built herself. Around noon, my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. Hey man, he said, his voice barely hiding amusement. Just heard from my buddy who works at Ellison. Your wife and her boss are the talk of the building. HR's pulling emails, text records, the whole circus. I nearly spit out my coffee. No kidding. Oh, and apparently Derek's wife showed up at the office this morning. Oh, that's new. Yeah, Ryan continued. She walked straight to HR demanding answers. Said something about hiring a private investigator. The receptionist said she looked like she was about to throw hands. I chuckled. Remind me to send that woman flowers. You're a menace, Ryan said, laughing. A beautiful, chaotic menace. Thank you, I said, grinning. I prefer agent of equilibrium. The rest of the day was quiet, but I knew a storm was still brewing. That evening, when Harper came home, her entire aura screamed defeat. She looked smaller somehow, like her confidence had been repossessed. She didn't even yell this time. Just walked in, sat at the table, and muttered, They suspended me too. I raised an eyebrow. You? What? Conflict of interest pending investigation, she said, voice trembling. They said I violated professional boundaries. HR found messages. Friendly ones. But they're making it sound worse than it was. I nodded sympathetically, the way a therapist might nod at a client who refuses accountability. That's rough. She glared. You think this is funny? No, I said. Tragic, really. You spend months praising Derek, and now he can't even save you. God, you're insufferable, she muttered. I've been called worse, I said. Usually by women who lost HR battles. She stood up, eyes cold. You're disgusting. I shrugged. At least I still have a job. She stormed off again, muttering something about calling her dad. Classic move. When in doubt, summon parental backup. I could already picture the phone call. Daddy, my husband used corporate ethics against me. Good luck with that defense, sweetheart. That night, as she slammed drawers upstairs, I poured another drink and sat by the window. It hit me then. This was the moment my marriage officially flatlined. Not the affair, not the card, but this exact silence between us. The moment when two people share a house, but not a heartbeat. Still, I didn't regret it. Not one bit. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people don't fall apart because of a single act. They collapse from the weight of every ignored warning. Harper thought she could keep stacking them. Flirty jokes, lunches, compliments, without consequence. All I did was remove the safety net. When I finally went to bed, she was curled up facing the wall, phone clutched in her hand. I climbed in quietly, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of her muffled sobs. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered her laughing about her work husband, and that sympathy evaporated faster than her job security. In risk management, we have a saying, every loss is just an unacknowledged risk. Harper ignored hers. Derek ignored his. Me? I just did my job. And as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but smile. The HR earthquake had done its work, and I didn't even break a sweat pulling the trigger. By Saturday morning, the tension in our house could have powered a small city. Harper hadn't spoken a word to me since the HR apocalypse, which, frankly, was the quietest blessing I'd ever received. The silence wasn't peaceful, though. It was tactical. You could feel it in the air, that storm before the storm quiet. I was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes like a man with nothing left to lose, when she finally descended from the stairs, eyes puffy, attitude sharp enough to file a lawsuit. "You think this is over?" she said, arms crossed, voice trembling with rage and espresso. I turned over a pancake, calm as zen. "I think it's just getting good." She scoffed. "You're proud of yourself? You've ruined my career, Blake." "My career? Do you even understand what you've done?" I set down the spatula. "Yeah, I sent a thank you card." She slammed her palm on the counter. "You humiliated me." "Correction," I said, leaning forward. "You humiliated yourself. I just gave your little lunch buddy's HR department a heads up." "You're disgusting," she said, voice cracking. "You think this is some kind of game?" "It was a marriage," I replied. "You turned it into a competition." She pointed at me. "I should have known you'd do something like this. You've always been petty." "Petty?" I laughed. "No, Harper. I'm methodical. Petty people key cars. Methodical people send cards." Her eyes filled with tears, but the venom was still there. "You're going to regret this." I sighed, grabbed my coffee, and walked to the couch. I already regret marrying someone who thinks emotional affairs count as networking. She started pacing, muttering things like, "You'll see, and my father will fix this." I'd heard that line before. Richard Hale, her father, was a retired investment banker who treated every problem like a bad quarter to be managed. The man had a god complex and an ego big enough to have its own zip code. If she was calling him, it meant she'd already lost control. When she stomped off to the bedroom, I sat there sipping my coffee, feeling that strange mix of exhaustion and clarity you only get after pulling off a revenge operation successfully. But there's a law of physics in relationships. Every reaction has an equal and dramatic overreaction. I knew she wasn't done. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, she came back with her phone pressed to her ear, whispering furiously. "Dad, he's acting crazy," she said, pretending I couldn't hear. "He sent that stupid card, and now HR thinks Derek and I." She stopped mid-sentence when I raised my coffee mug in mouth. "Think what?" She turned her back to me. "No, I didn't do anything wrong. He's just jealous and vindictive." Pause. "No, I'm not staying here. I'll come tonight." I smiled. The fact that she was calling for extraction meant my timeline was moving faster than I'd hoped. I decided to help it along. I stood, stretched, and said, "You've got an hour to pack." She spun around. "What? You heard me. 1 hour. I'll even help with the boxes if you need." Her face twisted. "You can't just kick me out." I shrugged. "I can, and I just did. You said you're going to your dad's, right? Perfect. Tell him to have the guest room ready." "You're heartless," she spat. "Not heartless," I corrected. "Just efficient." She glared at me like she wanted to throw something, then stomped upstairs again. Drawers slammed, hangers rattled, doors opened and shut like an orchestra of drama. I could almost hear the soundtrack of her downfall playing in my head. By the time I came back from grabbing burgers an hour later, she was gone. The closet was empty, her vanity was cleared, and the house felt bigger, like someone had just vacuumed the toxicity out of it. She'd left a note on the kitchen table, written in big, angry loops. You're a vindictive psychopath. I hope you rot alone. I read it twice, then smiled. Frame-worthy. The handwriting alone screamed emotional instability. I grabbed a cheap frame from the closet, slid the note inside, and hung it right above my desk. Motivation art. The next morning, I called Ryan, my lawyer friend, to fill him in. She's gone, I said. He let out a whistle. That fast? Yep. Took her designer luggage and her inflated sense of self-importance. He laughed. So what's next? You want to file for divorce? Eventually, I said. Right now, I just want peace. Peace, he repeated. Man, you say that like you're retired from marriage warfare. I am, I said. I'm taking early withdrawal. He chuckled. Well, I read Ellison's internal memo. She's toast. Derek's under review for misconduct, and HR's dragging both their names through the mud. I smirked. So my little card worked better than I expected. Worked too well, he said. They found emails. He called her his creative muse. That's HR language for termination with prejudice. Beautiful, I said. I love when paperwork tells a love story. He laughed again. You really are something else, Blake. You ever consider writing a self-help book? Revenge, the administrative way. Tempting, I said. Chapter 1. How to weaponize politeness. He snorted. Anyway, enjoy your quiet weekend. You've earned it. And I did. That night, I ordered Chinese takeout, cracked open a beer, and scrolled through Netflix without anyone asking. Can we watch something else? The house was silent, calm, blissfully mine again. I even stretched out on the couch like a man claiming his territory. It felt right. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I ignored it. Buzzed again. I answered, mostly out of curiosity. Blake Miller, a voice asked. Deep, authoritative, and carrying the weight of too many golf memberships. Speaking. This is Richard Hale. Ah, there it was. The boss level. To what do I owe the pleasure, Richard? I asked, already smirking. You've made a grave mistake, son, he said, using that condescending tone older men use when they still think they're in charge. Harper's beside herself. You've sabotaged her professional reputation, and for what? A childish joke. Not childish, I said. Strategic. Big difference. You think this is funny? Not really, I said. But it's definitely educational. He sighed dramatically, the kind of sigh that says, I pay people to handle my problems, not argue with them. Listen, you're going to call HR on Monday. You're going to tell them you overreacted and that you've been struggling mentally. We'll get you in a counseling program. I'll pay for it. I actually laughed out loud. You want me to fake insanity to fix her mess? It's the only way they'll drop the investigation, he said sternly. Do this, and maybe her career can be salvaged. With all due respect, I said, if a $20 Starbucks card can destroy her career, maybe she shouldn't be in marketing. She clearly can't handle campaigns. He went silent, then hung up. Twice. I swear I could hear him fuming through the dial tone. Not 10 minutes later, Harper's best friend, Sierra, the self-appointed emotional support parrot, texted me. You didn't have to ruin her life. She's devastated. She can't even make her car payments now. I grinned. Interesting, I typed back. Since I co-signed that car, I'd say it's my financial life too. You're unbelievable, she replied. So I've heard, I sent back. Then I called the leasing company. Yeah, my co-signer just lost her job, I explained. Not sure she can keep up with payments. Within an hour, the tow truck was outside Harper's apartment complex. I almost felt bad for the car. It hadn't done anything wrong. It just had the misfortune of being tied to her. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Harper, you monster. They're taking my car. I typed back calmly. That's the price of luxury rides and lousy decisions. Maybe Derek can Uber you to your interviews. Then I blocked her number and went back to my takeout. I slept better that night than I had in months. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows like freedom. The house smelled like coffee and contentment. I made breakfast for one and scrolled through news headlines, half expecting to see a piece titled, Local Marketing Duo Fired Over Starbucks Scandal. I didn't, but I knew the office grapevine was buzzing louder than a nest of wasps. Later that day, Ryan texted me, Derek officially on leave. Harper's next. I typed back, Justice runs on caffeine. He replied with a laughing emoji and said, You're the most dangerous man with a stationary set I've ever met. He wasn't wrong. That night, I took down our wedding photo from the living room wall. Not because I was angry, but because I was done pretending. I replaced it with the framed note she'd left me. Vindictive psychopath. Every time I walked by it, I smiled. It was the most honest thing she'd ever written. For once in my life, I didn't feel like the overthinking husband or the boring risk analyst. I felt like a man who'd finally closed a bad investment and come out ahead. And as I sat there, alone but content, I raised a toast to the universe and whispered, "Here's to clean exits and quiet revenge." Because if there's one thing I learned from Harper, it's this. Never underestimate a man with patience, sarcasm, and access to certified mail. Monday evening, I was halfway through a leftover burger and a documentary about shark attacks when my phone rang. Unknown number again. I ignored it once, twice, 3 times. Because if there's one thing I've learned, nothing good ever starts with "This is Richard Hale." But the man was persistent. Fourth call in, I sighed, hit accept, and braced myself. "Mr. Miller," came the voice, low, controlled, and pretentious enough to belong to a man who refers to his lawn as the estate. "This is Richard Hale, Harper's father." "Richard," I said cheerfully, "good to hear from you again. Did the stock market collapse, or are we just doing our weekly lecture?" He ignored that. "You've made a grave mistake, son." "Only one. Progress," I said, taking another bite of burger. "I've spoken to Harper," he continued, like he was narrating a courtroom drama. "You've humiliated her beyond repair. She's lost her position at Ellison Mutual, her professional reputation is in ruins, and she's emotionally shattered. You've crossed a line." I said, pretending to think. "You mean the line that separates marriage from office comedy?" "Because she leaped over that one like an Olympic athlete." He let out that heavy sigh rich men use when they realize they can't buy your compliance. "This isn't funny, Blake. You've embarrassed this family." I wiped my hands on a napkin. "Your family embarrassed itself. I just mailed the receipts." "You listen to me," he said sharply. "You'll call Ellison Mutual's HR tomorrow morning and explain that you overreacted, that you were under emotional distress, maybe unstable, and acted irrationally. They'll retract her termination if they believe you're unwell." I nearly choked laughing. "So your plan is for me to fake mental illness to fix her reputation?" "It's the least you can do," he snapped. "Oh, believe me," I said. "The least I can do is nothing." Which is exactly what I plan to do. "Don't test me, son," he warned, his voice low and cold. "You think I won't make calls? I still have friends in finance and law." I cut him off. "Richard, the only people who care about your friends in finance are other old men waiting for death or dividends. Save the threats." "You ungrateful." "With respect, sir," I interrupted. If a $20 Starbucks card and a thank you note could sink her career, maybe she wasn't built for corporate life. Some people aren't meant for high-pressure environments, like those who confuse HR with therapy. He hung up. Twice, actually. I laughed so hard I had to put my burger down. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a wall of text from Sierra, Harper's best friend, her unpaid life coach, and self-proclaimed guardian of female empowerment. You know the type. Posts motivational quotes like, "Know your worth, queen," while dating guys who treat her like an expired coupon. "You're unbelievable, Blake," she wrote. "Harper is crying nonstop. She can't even make her car payments now. You've completely ruined her life. Do you feel proud?" I typed back, "Proud? No." "Amused?" "A little. You co-signed that car loan." She replied, "And now I regret that life choice too." I texted, "But don't worry, I'm handling it." Handling it meant calling the leasing company. "Hi." "Yes," I said, sounding concerned. "My co-signer just lost her job and, unfortunately, won't be able to continue payments." They were very understanding. Almost too eager, actually. "We can initiate a repossession within 24 hours, the woman said. "Perfect," I replied. Efficiency is key. By the next evening, I got a text from Harper that nearly made me spit out my drink. "You monster. They're taking my car." I grinned and typed back. "That's the price of luxury rides and lousy decisions. Maybe Derek can Uber you to your interviews." 3 dots appeared like she was typing back. Then they disappeared. Then nothing. I waited, but the message never came. I guess even she knew there was no comeback to that one. Later that night, I called Ryan to share the update. "So," I said, "the car's gone, Richard's furious, and Harper's probably hyperventilating into a decorative pillow. It's been a productive day." Ryan laughed. You're out of your mind, man. You could write a case study on vengeance. It's not vengeance, I said. It's asset recovery. He snorted. Semantics. You're cold. Not cold, I corrected. Just done funding bad investments. He whistled. Still, don't poke the bear too much. Guys like Richard? They love dragging people into court just to feel relevant. Let him try, I said. If he sues, he'll have to explain to a judge why his daughter was demoted for being too close to her boss. Good luck with that PR spin. Ryan chuckled. True. Anyway, drinks this weekend. Yeah, I said. Let me finish this whole soap opera first. Then I'll celebrate. I hung up, kicked my feet onto the coffee table, and scrolled through my emails. One stood out, from Ellison Mutual. Not to me directly, but a forwarded message from one of Ryan's contacts there. Subject, Policy Violation Review, Confidential. It confirmed that both Derek and Harper had been officially terminated due to inappropriate conduct violating company ethics. I stared at that line for a full minute. For months of suspicion, doubt, gaslighting, all validated by corporate HR. My smile came slow but steady. I didn't even need revenge anymore. I had closure in PDF form. The next morning, Harper's name popped up again on my phone. I answered, mostly because I was curious what stage of grief she'd reached. You're evil, she said, voice raw. Good morning to you too, I said cheerfully. My dad says you called the leasing company. I did. Why would you do that? Because I was still on the loan and didn't feel like subsidizing your post-firing road trips. She went silent for a moment, then muttered, You'll regret this. I laughed softly. Sweetheart, I've been regretting this marriage since our second anniversary. Everything after that's just a highlight reel. You think you're so clever, she spat. But karma will get you. Oh, karma already got me, I said. It had your name, wore your perfume, and drained my savings for 4 years. I'm all paid up. She hung up again. You'd think she'd learn not to give me that dramatic exit satisfaction, but consistency was her only strength. That night, I got a call from an unknown number again. I almost didn't answer until I heard a woman's voice say, Mr. Miller? Yes. This is Angela from Carter & Thompson Law. We represent Mr. Richard Hale. I grinned. Here we go. She continued. Our client believes your recent actions constitute intentional emotional distress and financial harm toward his daughter, Ms. Harper Hale Miller. He intends to pursue legal action unless you agree to an amicable settlement of $30,000. I almost dropped the phone laughing. $30,000? For what? Postage and Starbucks. I'll note your refusal, she said stiffly. Oh no, please note this too, I said. Tell Mr. Hale that if he files anything, I'll happily countersue for defamation and malicious interference. I've got documented proof from HR that Harper was terminated for misconduct. You might want to Google involuntary disclosure of workplace relationships. I hear judges love that stuff. There was a pause on the other end. Then she muttered, We'll relay your message. I'm sure you will, I said. Tell him to spend that 30 grand on a new golf cart instead. When I hung up, I called Ryan immediately. You'll never guess what just happened. He laughed through the whole retelling. Man, you're giving me secondhand joy right now. I'll draft a response just in case they try something formal. A week later, Ryan sent me the finished letter. It was professional perfection, sarcastic enough to sting, airtight enough to scare them off. It began, Our client, Mr. Miller, sent a single note of appreciation. Any resulting career implosion was due entirely to your client's voluntary violation of company policy. We never heard from them again. Somewhere in Richard Hale's overpriced office, a junior lawyer was probably crying over that response while Richard yelled about principles and family honor. Days turned into weeks. Harper faded into the background noise of my life. Just another file closed and archived. But the satisfaction? That stayed. The nights were quieter now. No arguments. No lectures about emotional labor or work-life synergy. Just peace, takeout, and an endless supply of sarcastic gratitude to the universe. Then one Friday night, Sierra texted again. You're awful, you know that? Probably, I replied. But I sleep great. She really loved you once, she wrote. Yeah, I replied. And I really believed in Santa once. We both grew up. No reply after that. I think even she realized there was no saving this storyline. I leaned back on the couch, beer in hand, and looked around the quiet condo. There was something deeply satisfying about the stillness. My framed note on the wall, Vindictive Psychopath, glowed faintly in the lamplight. I raised my bottle to it and said, to accurate self-assessments. Because the truth was, I didn't care if they called me crazy, cruel, or calculating. I wasn't the villain in this story, I was the audit. And everyone knows, when the audit shows up, the lies don't last long. So yeah, Daddy Dearest could rage, Harper could cry, and Sierra could text her little manifestos. I had what I wanted: freedom, clarity, and a clean credit report. And as I turned off the lights that night, I couldn't help but laugh to myself. Because in the grand balance sheet of life, I'd just turned a marriage-sized liability into the most profitable loss I'd ever taken. A week later, just when I thought the circus had finally packed up and left town, the clowns came back for an encore. Tuesday morning, I opened my mailbox and saw it. An envelope that screamed pretentious law firm. Cream-colored, gold-embossed lettering, the kind of stationery that costs more than dignity. The return address read, Hale, Duncan and Stone Attorneys at Law. I stood there on the porch, sipping my coffee, staring at it like it was an eviction notice from karma. For a second, I almost didn't open it. Then I thought, why deprive myself of entertainment? Inside was a letter so dramatic it could have been written by Shakespeare's least successful cousin. Our client, Ms. Harper Hale Miller, has suffered intentional emotional sabotage, defamation, and psychological harm due to your malicious actions. It began. We hereby demand a settlement of $30,000 to compensate for the damage inflicted on her personal and professional life. $30,000. I actually laughed out loud. One of those deep, ugly laughs that makes the neighbors look through their blinds. Emotional sabotage? Lady, the only thing sabotaged was her ability to keep her workplace romances private. I took a sip of coffee and reread the letter just for fun. Psychological harm. Yeah, sure. Because nothing says, I'm emotionally stable, like getting fired for flirting over company email. I brought the letter inside, dropped it on the counter, and texted Ryan. You're gonna love this. Harper's dad sent his goons. 30 grand for emotional damages. He replied within 30 seconds. Send me a picture of the letter before I choke on my bagel. I snapped a photo, sent it, and waited. 10 seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Jesus Christ. This reads like a Lifetime movie script written by a drunk paralegal. Exactly, I muttered. All that's missing is the slow piano music and a monologue about redemption. Ryan called me immediately. Okay, he said, laughing. This is the dumbest thing I've seen all year. They're trying to bully you into silence. Don't worry, I've got you. Hit me with your best legal poetry, I said. Oh, I'm gonna make it sing, he said, already typing in the background. Something so airtight they'll use it in law school as an example of don't mess with petty husbands. Correction, I said. Methodical husbands. He snorted. Right. Methodical. Anyway, I'll have a response ready by tomorrow. Sure enough, the next morning, I woke up to an email from Ryan titled Return Fire, Draft 1. It began beautifully, like a Shakespearean sonnet made of pure sarcasm. Dear Hale, Duncan and Stone, our client, Mr. Blake Miller, denies all allegations of emotional sabotage. He merely exercised his constitutional right to send a courteous note of appreciation accompanied by a modest $20 Starbucks gift card. Any resulting fallout was due entirely to your client's voluntary violation of company policy, as confirmed by Ellison Mutual's HR department. Should your firm wish to pursue this matter further, we look forward to the discovery process revealing the full extent of your client's communications with her married supervisor, Mr. Derek Mills. I laughed so hard I had to put my coffee down. It was perfect, polite, professional, and dripping with venom. I called Ryan. This is art. Thank you, he said. I call it the coffee-fueled smackdown. You think they'll bite? Oh, they'll fold, he said confidently. No sane lawyer wants their client's office affair paraded through legal discovery. He was right. A week passed, and I never heard from Hale, Duncan, and Stone again. Somewhere in that fancy office, Richard Hale was probably red-faced and yelling about principles, while some poor junior associate shredded the letter to avoid career suicide. The quiet that followed was the kind of peace you can't buy. I went back to my routines. Work, gym, sleeping through the night without the soundtrack of marital drama echoing in my head. Even the coffee tasted better. I could drink it slow, alone, and not have someone barge in complaining that I left the milk cap loose again. But peace has a funny way of being interrupted by stupidity. That Saturday, I was mid-grocery run when I spotted someone I hadn't seen since the wedding, Harper's cousin Lila. She was the family's gossip courier, a walking TMZ feed with no chill. She saw me and gasped like I'd risen from the dead. "Oh my God, Blake," she said, clutching her pearls. Or maybe it was just a cheap necklace pretending to be one. I smiled. "Hey, Lila, how's the family PR department holding up?" She frowned. "You know everyone's talking about you, right? They said you destroyed Harper's life, that she's in therapy. Her dad said you mailed a fake letter to HR to ruin her career." I chuckled. "Fake? Lady, it had the official Ellison Mutual letterhead. HR doesn't use Comic Sans." Lila's eyes darted like she was torn between pity and curiosity. "She said you're a narcissist who can't handle a strong woman." Strong? I raised an eyebrow. She got emotionally out-bench pressed by a $20 Starbucks card. "Let's not rewrite history." Lila blinked. You're really not sorry, are you?" I tilted my head. "For exposing a corporate affair that was already imploding?" "Not particularly." She shook her head and walked away muttering something about toxic men. I waved cheerfully and went back to choosing avocados. Some people just can't handle poetic justice. Later that night, I called Ryan again. "You'll never guess who cornered me at Whole Foods. Please tell me you didn't get into another debate with one of Harper's relatives." "Guilty," he groaned. "Dude, you're supposed to be chilling, not auditioning for Real Housewives, Ex-Husbands Edition." "I can't help it," I said. "They find me. It's like I'm emotionally subpoenaed by their curiosity." Ryan laughed. "Well, enjoy it while it lasts. In a few weeks, this'll all blow over. People have short memories." He was right again. Over the next few weeks, the noise faded. Harper's side of the story shrank down to whispers, and my life finally found its rhythm again. Work picked up. I started hitting the gym regularly, and my evenings were blissfully filled with silence and sarcasm. Then, one Thursday, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy." No name. No emoji. Just pure, bitter punctuation. I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Very." The 3 dots appeared, then vanished. I blocked the number. I told Ryan about it the next day. "She's still trying to guilt you," he said. "That's the final stage, playing the victim card until it disintegrates." "I know," I said. "It's like watching someone try to argue with gravity." Ryan laughed. "You should teach a class. Revenge for Introverts. A polite guide to wrecking lives without raising your voice." "Hey, I'd enroll," I said. First lesson, stationery can be deadlier than sarcasm. But if I'm honest, under all the humor, I did have moments of reflection. There were nights I sat on my porch, beer in hand, wondering if I'd gone too far. If maybe I should have just walked away quietly instead of detonating her professional world. Then I'd remember how she laughed that night, the smug little work husband joke that started it all, and the guilt would evaporate like spilled vodka. Because here's the thing about people like Harper. They count on you to stay quiet. They count on your restraint, your decency, your fear of being the bad guy. They weaponize your silence. So when you finally stand up, they scream, "Overreaction," because it's the only move they've got left. I wasn't sorry for holding her accountable. I was sorry it took me 4 years to do it. A few days later, Ryan sent me a screenshot from LinkedIn. "You'll love this," his text said. Harper's old boss, Derek, had updated his profile. His new title? Associate Compliance Officer. I almost fell off my chair laughing. The man who got fired for violating compliance now worked in compliance. The irony was so rich it needed a tax bracket. I replied to Ryan, "Karma promotes from within." He wrote back, "You should trademark that." That night, I poured myself a whiskey and toasted to the digital gods. Somewhere out there, Derek was sitting in a cubicle reading about corporate ethics while Harper scrolled job listings titled Entry-Level Administrative Assistant. And me? I was free, broke even, emotionally speaking, and ready for whatever came next. I went to bed that night feeling lighter. For the first time in months, there was no resentment sitting in my chest, just a quiet kind of satisfaction, the kind that doesn't need applause or validation. And as I drifted off to sleep, one thought ran through my mind. They thought I was crazy. But turns out, I was just early to the audit. It started on a Saturday morning, the kind of peaceful weekend morning you dream about after years of marital noise. The sun was gentle, the coffee was strong, and the only drama I expected was deciding between pancakes or waffles. I just settled into my recliner, newspaper in one hand, bliss in the other, when someone started knocking at my front door. Not a casual knock-knock, either. No, this was an open-up, it's Judgment Day kind of knock. I sighed, put down my mug, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw a police officer standing there, posture straight, expression neutral, the universal look of someone about to ruin your weekend. But it wasn't the uniform that caught my attention. It was the two familiar faces standing behind him. Harper and her father, Richard Hale. I almost laughed. Of course, the villains had returned for their grand finale. I opened the door, calm as ever. "Morning, officer. What's the occasion?" "Neighborhood bake sale." He gave me the kind of polite nod cops reserve for people they're not sure will behave. "Sir, we're here for a civil standby. Miss Hale needs to collect her belongings." I smiled. "Perfect timing, officer." Everything's boxed and labeled. Behind him, Harper stood stiff, her face painted with a combination of anger and humiliation. She'd gone full courtroom chic. Black blazer, slick ponytail, oversized sunglasses to hide her. I lost everything eyes. Richard stood beside her, chest puffed out like a man who thought he was still in control of something. He was gripping a folder, probably full of irrelevant paperwork and self-importance. "Civil standby?" I said, pretending to think. "Oh, you mean the part where you stand there to make sure the emotionally unstable ex doesn't key my furniture or burn the place down?" "Got it, sir," the officer said calmly. "Let's just keep things civil." "Of course," I said, stepping aside. Civility's my middle name. They entered like they owned the place. Harper's heels clicking across the hardwood floor she once bragged she'd personally designed. She stopped near the living room, eyes scanning the space like she was walking through a museum of her own bad decisions. "You redecorated," she said bitterly. "Yeah," I said, glancing at the empty walls. "Took down all the reminders of emotional debt. Place looks bigger now." Richard cleared his throat like a man about to deliver a TED Talk nobody asked for. "Blake, let's handle this quickly and maturely. Harper is here to collect her personal property. No need for sarcasm or theatrics." "Oh, trust me," I said. "The theatrics are all hers." I gestured toward 12 neatly stacked boxes by the front door. "Everything's accounted for. Clothes, shoes, accessories, questionable self-help books about manifesting respect. Even threw in a few expired face masks for nostalgia." Harper folded her arms. "Where's my antique vanity?" "That was my grandmother's." I reached for the receipt taped on the mirror across the room. "You mean the vanity I bought for $1,200 from Ethan Allen last spring?" "Yeah, not antique, just overpriced." "That's not true," she snapped. "You're lying." The officer walked over, glanced at the receipt, and said, "Ma'am, this looks like proof of purchase." I smiled politely. "See, officer? Paperwork, the universal language of truth." Richard huffed. "This is ridiculous. That vanity belongs to my daughter. Show some decency." "Decency?" I asked. "Sir, you raised a woman who treated marriage like an unpaid internship. You lost the moral high ground somewhere between work husband and career implosion. Watch your tone," he warned. The officer intervened, voice steady. "Let's keep this calm. Miss Hale, you can take the boxes, not the furniture. Those items are listed under joint assets to be settled legally." Harper clenched her jaw, muttering something under her breath that sounded like a rejected curse. "Officer," I said, "if you need help carrying them, I can provide hand trucks. I believe in efficiency." Harper glared. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "Enjoying it?" I said. "No." "Documenting it?" "Absolutely." Her father stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think this makes you the bigger man? Ruining her dignity like this?" I chuckled. "Richard, dignity left this house the moment your daughter joked about her work husband over Pinot Grigio." The officer turned to him. "Sir, please step back. We're almost done here." Harper finally started grabbing boxes, slamming them down harder than necessary, as if cardboard vengeance could hurt me. Each thud was oddly satisfying, a percussive symphony of closure. When she reached the last box, she looked around the living room one final time. Her eyes landed on the framed note on the wall, the one she'd left behind calling me a vindictive psychopath. She froze. "You framed it." "Of course," I said, smiling. "It's inspirational, like a corporate mission statement, but personal." Her father's face turned red. "You're deranged." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm also debt-free and sleeping great." The officer cleared his throat again, trying not to laugh. All right, Miss Hale, if you're done here. She didn't move. Instead, she turned to me, tears threatening but pride holding them hostage. You'll regret this, Blake. Already did, I said. For years ago. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. That silence. Oh, it was priceless. Years of nagging, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, all condensed into one glorious moment of wordless defeat. Richard finally put a hand on her shoulder. Come on, Harper. We're done here. They started toward the door. I followed, purely to savor the exit. As the officer helped them load the boxes into Richard's car, I leaned against the doorway, coffee in hand, and watched the scene like it was a live performance of Karma, the musical. Harper turned once more, looking at me with that mix of anger and disbelief that people wear when they realize their manipulation playbooks expired. You think you won, she said softly. I shrugged. No winners here. Just one guy who stopped playing. She got into the car, slamming the door with the kind of force that screamed unresolved trauma. Richard shot me one last glare before following her in. The officer gave me a polite nod. All done here, sir. Thank you, I said. You handled that like a pro. You ever think about specializing in marital disasters? You'd make a killing. He cracked a faint smile. You'd be surprised how common this is. Oh, I'm not surprised, I said. Just grateful I'm finally on the spectator's side. When they drove off, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was pure, golden freedom. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a moment, exhaling years of nonsense. The house felt lighter again, quieter. I walked back to the living room and looked at the empty space where her vanity used to be. Funny how objects can hold energy. Without it, the room actually looked peaceful, like it could finally breathe again. I poured myself another cup of coffee, sat back in my recliner, and opened my phone. Ryan had texted, heard from a mutual contact. HR finalized the reports. Derek and Harper are officially blacklisted from rehire. Congratulations, you're HR's favorite whistleblower. I laughed. Finally, a title worth having. Ryan replied, You gonna celebrate? Already am, I wrote back. They just finished the world's most expensive moving day. He sent a laughing emoji. You're a menace, but a poetic one. After that, I spent the rest of the day cleaning out the last traces of Harper's existence. Her candles, her framed live, laugh, love signs, her drawer full of half-used beauty products that smelled like floral regret, all gone. By evening, my trash can smelled like closure. Around sunset, I poured myself a whiskey and sat by the window, watching the sky turn gold. There was something therapeutic about it, the calm after chaos, the satisfaction of surviving a storm without losing your roof. For a moment, I wondered what Harper was doing. Maybe sitting in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by pink throw pillows and self-pity. Maybe scrolling through Indeed listings, trying to find a job that didn't require references. Maybe crying to Sierra about how I ruined her life. And maybe, just maybe, she was realizing that actions have consequences. Even if those actions came with free lunches and flirty office banter. Either way, I didn't care. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for an apology or an explanation. I had something better, peace, stability, and the delicious knowledge that karma had my back all along. As the night settled in, I raised my glass to the empty room. To civil standbys, I said, and the satisfaction of watching chaos pack its own damn boxes. And then I drank to the quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to be earned, just enjoyed. By the time the dust settled from the civil standby fiasco, the story had spread faster than free Wi-Fi. I didn't need to check social media or gossip groups to know people were talking. The silence that follows a scandal isn't peace. It's the sound of everyone whispering your name in private. And apparently, my little thank you card incident had become Ellison Mutual's version of The Office meets CSI. Monday morning, I got a call from Ryan, laughing so hard I thought he'd swallowed his AirPods. You're not going to believe this, he said between gasps. They've turned Derek's demotion into an entire training module for managers. You're kidding. Nope. They titled it Maintaining Professional Boundaries in the Workplace. There's even a PowerPoint slide with an anonymous case study about a manager buying lunch for a subordinate and how that can create the appearance of favoritism. I nearly spit out my coffee. They turned it into a teaching moment. Man, I should have charged them licensing fees. Oh, it gets better, Ryan said. Word is, Derek's been reassigned to compliance. Compliance. I repeated. That's corporate purgatory. They made him guard the gates of his own hell. Exactly, Ryan said, still laughing. He's basically the hall monitor for ethics now. The irony is biblical. I leaned back in my chair, savoring the moment. What about Harper? She's done. Officially fired. Gross misconduct, per HR's report. They said she violated both conflict of interest policy and confidentiality agreements. She's untouchable in the industry now. Wow, I said, whistling softly. She wanted Derek to make her famous, and he did. Just not the way she pictured. Ryan chuckled. There's more. Derek's wife filed for divorce last week. Apparently, she listed inappropriate workplace relationship as the cause and even cited receipt of Starbucks gift card in her filing. I nearly fell off my chair. You're lying. I swear, Ryan said. My contact at the courthouse saw it. She called it the most caffeinated divorce in county history. I was quiet for a moment, letting it all sink in. The irony, the fallout, the cosmic alignment of poetic justice. It was all too perfect. Hey, Ryan added. Just don't let it go to your head. Enjoy it quietly. You've already done enough damage. Who, me? I said innocently. I'm just a concerned citizen of the HR nation. But the truth? It did get to my head a little. It's hard not to feel powerful when a single sarcastic gesture reshapes an entire company's policy. Over the next few weeks, I started hearing stories from mutual contacts. Derek's new desk was apparently right next to the breakroom printer, a step down from the corner office he'd once bragged about. Harper, meanwhile, had become the office ghost story everyone told new hires. Don't be a Harper. Some said she tried to appeal the firing. Others claimed she stormed out of the HR office shouting about misogyny and toxic culture. But none of that mattered. The result was the same: career obituary, signed and sealed. One of Harper's co-workers, a woman named Marla, even called me anonymously. Look, I probably shouldn't be saying this, she whispered like we were in a spy movie. But HR actually thanked you. Not officially, of course, but internally. They said your letter exposed one of the longest-running rumors in the department. Glad to be of service, I said. Tell them my rates are competitive. She laughed nervously. Seriously, though, they said it saved them months of investigative work. You basically did half their audit. Oh, don't flatter me, I said. I only work pro bono when it involves poetic justice. After that call, I couldn't stop grinning. The thought that my $20 Starbucks card had set off an HR chain reaction big enough to reach the boardroom was almost too satisfying. Meanwhile, Harper's life outside of work was falling apart just as quickly. I heard through the grapevine that Sierra, her ever-loyal friend, had kicked her out after a month of freeloading. Something about boundaries and crying too loudly. Apparently, Sierra discovered that Harper had been using her Wi-Fi to stalk Derek's wife's Instagram. Classy. She ended up moving back to her hometown, the same small place she swore she'd never return to. A friend of a friend said she's working an entry-level admin job under someone named Pam. And here's the best part. Pam makes her file expense receipts. You couldn't write irony that perfect if you tried. I pictured it clearly. Harper sitting at a desk, eyes dull, entering data about coffee purchases while her boss said things like, remember to categorize client lunches separately. Somewhere deep down, she probably flinched every time she heard the word lunch. That mental image alone deserved a toast. I poured myself a drink that night, whiskey neat, and stood by the window, thinking about how far I'd come from that first awful dinner joke. Back then, I'd felt powerless. Now, I was free, untethered. My apartment smelled like peace, not tension. The walls echoed laughter again, mine this time, not hers. The funny thing about betrayal is how quiet it gets once it's over. You spend months waiting for closure, imagining dramatic speeches or tearful apologies. But in reality, it just ends. One day, you wake up and realize you don't care anymore. The anger, the pain, it burns itself out. What's left is calm and clarity. Still, I couldn't resist checking up on Derek one last time. A quick LinkedIn search showed his new title, Associate Director of Compliance Training. His bio now read, passionate about building ethical workplace cultures. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my drink. Ethical workplace cultures. The same guy who couldn't keep his hands off his subordinate was now teaching morality to interns. If irony were currency, I'd be a billionaire. I was still grinning when my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. Against my better judgment, I answered. Blake, came a familiar voice. It was Harper. For a second, I didn't say anything. I just stared at the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. You've got a lot of nerve calling me, I finally said. I'm not here to fight, she said softly. I wanted to apologize. That threw me. I wasn't expecting it. Apologize? You? Yes, she said. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong. I was stupid and selfish, and I paid for it. I just needed you to hear that. For a moment, I almost felt something, pity, maybe. But then I remembered the months of gaslighting, the laughter, the lies. The way she'd made me feel small in my own marriage. You're not apologizing, I said finally. You're just trying to clean your conscience. That's not true, she said quickly. I want us to be civil. I want peace. Peace. I said. You're standing in the wreckage asking for quiet. There was silence on the line. Then she said, you were always too good at making me feel like the villain. I smiled bitterly. Harper, you made yourself the villain. I just documented it. She exhaled shakily. You really hate me, don't you? I took a long breath. No. Hate takes energy. You're not worth that anymore. The line went quiet again. Then she whispered, goodbye, Blake, and hung up. I stood there for a while, staring at my phone, waiting for some grand emotion that never came. No anger, no sadness, just closure. The kind that doesn't need a soundtrack. Later that night, I called Ryan and told him about the call. He whistled. Wow. So she finally hit rock bottom. Huh. Seems like it, I said. Well, he said, at least you got your piece. Yeah, I said. And the best part? I didn't even need to raise my voice to get it. Ryan chuckled. Only you could wage psychological warfare with a gift card. I grinned. Hey, it's not about the money. It's about the ROI, revenge on investment. He laughed so hard I had to hold the phone away. You're insane. Maybe, I said, but I'm right. And as I sat there in the quiet glow of my living room, glass in hand, I realized something. I wasn't just free of her. I was free of the version of me that tolerated her. The man who once ignored red flags because love made him blind had finally learned how to see in high definition. Harper called it destruction. I called it data correction. And if anyone ever asked me how I pulled it off, I'd tell them the truth. All it took was one thank you card, $20, and a little bit of patience. Months later, my life finally stopped feeling like a courtroom drama and started feeling like a comeback tour. The condo was quiet in that good way, like it was finally exhaling after years of tension. My mornings didn't start with arguments or cold silence. They started with coffee, sunlight, and the occasional playlist of songs I actually liked. The ghosts were gone, both metaphorical and emotional. My credit score rebounded faster than my trust issues. The car payments, mortgage, utilities, everything was balanced again. No one was draining my accounts with essential target runs or emergency brunches. It was like living in financial therapy. And somewhere along that smooth road of peace and caffeine, I met Layla. She was a wildlife photographer who thought corporate meetings were an endangered species. First time I told her I worked in risk management, she said, so you basically predict disasters for a living? I smiled. Only the ones that don't wear perfume. She laughed so hard she snorted. And that's when I knew I was finally in safe territory. Layla wasn't impressed by my job title or my revenge resume. She liked simple things, early morning light, road trips with no GPS, and coffee that could double as jet fuel. When I told her about the Starbucks incident, she nearly choked laughing. Wait, you destroyed 2 careers with a thank you card and a gift card, she said. That's honestly genius. I shrugged. Some people fight with words. I just let HR do the heavy lifting. She raised her mug. To ethical pettiness. To professional karma. I replied, clinking mugs. I don't even call it revenge anymore. It wasn't. It was a cost-effective life reset. The kind of quiet justice that doesn't make headlines, but makes you sleep like a baby. Because when you strip it down, it wasn't about winning. It was about walking away clean. I'd spent years thinking love meant tolerance, forgiveness, second chances. Turns out, love without respect is just a slow burn toward resentment. Harper taught me that. And while I'll never thank her out loud, I'll admit this much. She gave me one hell of a lesson in risk management. Now when I talk to clients about preventing disasters, I slip in my own version of wisdom. Always assess emotional liabilities before financial ones. They laugh, but I mean every word. Because life's biggest losses don't show up on a spreadsheet. They show up in trust broken quietly over dinner, in jokes that weren't funny until they cost everything. Sometimes I think about that moment, the night she made the joke that started it all. My work husband buys me lunch every day. You need to step up. She thought she was being clever. She thought I'd sulk or argue. Instead, I smiled and started drafting her exit strategy in my head. Funny how people mistake silence for weakness. It's been a year now. Harper's name doesn't sting anymore. Derek's somewhere managing compliance like irony itself put him on payroll. And me? I'm exactly where I should be. At peace, with my sarcasm intact and my conscience spotless. I still pass by Starbucks sometimes and can't help but grin. I imagine a barista calling out, "Vinny caramel latte for Harper." And somewhere, she shivers without knowing why. Because that's what life does. It pays you back in small, poetic installments. So yeah, they called it drama. But I call it risk management, with an excellent return on investment.